Hey guys, welcome to another episode of The Completionist. Back again for the Christmas season again, guys. So for this episode, guys, I wanted to try a new series. And because I'm kind of running out of ideas with regards to making content just because of my hectic work schedule. And the idea that I want to talk about is something that, one of my friends mentioned to me as I was completing a game that I was playing over the last 7 to 8 months. Now, for any of you that are on my personal Facebook page, you know the game that I've been trying to complete for the majority of the year has been Final Fantasy 13. Now, thankfully, in December, I finally managed to complete that game to 100%. But one of my friends wanted to bring up this point that why do I still keep playing games if it doesn't seem fun anymore? And I really took that question to heart because, to complete games, it can be a bit of a daunting task, and for all the years that I have completed games, I've had some personal struggles with regards to completing them, because my completionist attitude is that I consider myself, especially in the realm of video games, that I'm very obsessive compulsive in the sense that even if things aren't as fun anymore, I still want to finish it. I still want to complete everything to 100%, no matter how painful or how mundane it is. So what I wanted to do, guys, is I wanted to share with you some of my biggest struggles that I have ever had with regards to completing video games. And this will be an episodic series, with each episode focusing on one game in particular. And because out of all the years that I have completed video games, I do have some very amusing but also some very painful stories with regards to completing some of the video games that I have over the last couple of years. The thing is that if you watch my video of why do I complete video games, you do know that, for me completing video games, it's more of a personal challenge to me. Because if it's one thing that I can humbly admit is that I don't consider myself very good at a lot of things. I might have an unbelievable amount of patience, but that's probably my greatest trait more than anything. But I've never been that kind of gamer that that I want to be popular for doing something gaming related. I don't. I simply want to enjoy games for the simplest reasons, and I don't want the slightest semblance of fame or recognition of it, because I've never considered myself a competitive gamer. Even though, despite my tenacious nature towards completing video games, I really don't want to be recognized for that. It's just, I just want to play my games and complete them as my own personal accomplishment, not necessarily something to brag about or anything along those lines, or to give me a sense of semblance that I'm a better gamer than other people. Because video games are the one hobby that has always stuck with me ever since I started playing video games to begin with. And in order to complete video games, it's just simply a personal challenge that I set to myself. And some of the games that I complete end up being very easy, but other games end up being really difficult. Not even for the sake of being difficult, it's just literally making stupid mistakes that make me start the game over. And I will admit that I have done that. I am very obsessive compulsive about completing video games, that if I miss something, or if I miss any kind of permanent missable or story sequence, I will start the game over to make sure that I absolutely do everything that is required in the game. So, anyway, the first story that I wanted to share with you is one of the first RPGs that I ever completed when I just started to get really hardcore into completing video games was Lunar, the Silver Star story complete for the PS1. Now, this wasn't the first JRPG that I had played for the PS1. I had played games like Final Fantasy VII, Thousand Arms, Xenogears before I had even touched this game. But this was actually one of the first video games that I actually owned. Because when I really started to get into anime style games and I started looking at the JRPG library for the PS1, Lunar was really on the top of my list because obviously if you've seen the box artwork of Lunar, you can't really get any more anime style than that. And even though it's a very simplistic JRPG, I actually had to play this game 3 times in order to complete it. Even though you only need to play it once. But I've made 2 incredibly stupid mistakes that made me replay the game over twice. And technically I should have only had to replay the game once, but due to greed and trying to get through the game as fast as possible, I ended up missing something that ended up not giving me the opportunity to complete it. Now, Lunar, the Silver Star Story Complete was actually one of the first PS1 games that I actually bought and owned because back in the early days of eBay, because that was really the only way I could get access to the game, because by the time I had some personal money in university, we were already on to the PS2 generation, so you couldn't really get PS1 games all that much. And so I had a really good friend in university by the name of Scott, and Scott had an eBay account, and I had asked him if he could find this game for me and if he could buy it for me. Because I didn't have an eBay account, I didn't have a credit card, I didn't have a PayPal account. So he was kind enough to buy the game for me and to give me the price for it, and I paid him the money once the game arrived. Now, Lunar, the Silver Star Story Complete taught me a lot of lessons with regards to completing games. Some fundamental rules, per se. Because not only did I buy the game, but the game actually came with the official Lunar, the Silver Star Story Complete strategy guide. And for anyone that knows how I play games and how I complete games, I actually play my games using strategy guides all the time. And a lot of people would question, well, that doesn't seem very fun. That would literally, take you out of the experience. But, I try to avoid spoilers in the guides because for a lot of JRPGs and a lot of games in general, it's very easy to miss out on items and story sequences and stuff like that. And usually when I complete a game, I want to get it done on the first try, especially if it only requires one playthrough to fully complete it, because if anyone's aware of some of my personal rules when it comes to completing games is that once a game is completed to 100%, it's retired. I never will play it again, and it gets retired to the shelf and stays on the shelf, and will hopefully be passed on to somebody else eventually. So my first playthrough of the game, I ended up using that strategy guide religiously, and I followed it right down to a T. Now, one of the biggest missables in Lunar, the Silver Star Story Complete is the bromides. Now, what is a bromide, you may ask? Well, a bromide is basically a pitcher of one of the female characters in Lunar. You know, some of the pictures are innocent, some of them can be a little provocative, but they can be easily missed if you don't go to certain towns or talk to people at the right time, and they can be some of the most easily missed items in the actual game. And I was going through that guide page by page to making, in order to make sure I got every item, finding every story sequence, and just to make sure I didn't miss out on anything. But one of the first lessons and the first rules I will ever tell people when it comes to completing games is that always do your research and never complete a game using one guide or one set of source material, because you'll often find that sometimes the guides may not cover everything, even though it comes from a licensed source, it comes from a reputable company. However, when I was going through that strategy guide, and the strategy guide told me how to get one of the bromides, it was actually incorrect. And I ended up missing out on that item. And for an obsessive compulsive completionist like me, and even though I had anywhere from 18 to 20 hours invested into the game, I started over. Which may seem really crazy, you know, it's only an item, you know, it's only data, you know, why would you take it too seriously like that? But, you know, it's not as if, you know, I didn't really have other games to play, because, you know, I really didn't have much in the way of games to play. So I really had no issues of, you know, going back and replaying it, because I really had no other games to play at the time. So, going through the guide, I will tell you exactly the mistake that this guide ended up making. And it's right in the back page here, under the caption of Find the Bromides. And basically what you're looking for is that the item is Jess's bromide number 2. And in the guide, what it says here is that Jess's bromide 2 is that you get it, what it says here is it's being held by the eye patch wearing boatman on the dock of Lan, of the town of Lan, which is true, only after Nash destroys the balloon engine and before you leave for the frontier. Now, the only part of that was correct is that you do get it by, from the eye patch wearing boatman on the dock of Lan, but they got the timing wrong. And I did not notice, because I thought this guide was 100% accurate with regards to getting every item in the game, but it wasn't. So after doing some research on the internet through GameFAQs, what I discovered is that if Nash blows up the balloon airship in the game, then you miss out on your chance of getting the bromide. How you end up getting it is once you defeat the Black Dragon in the Black Dragon Fortress, using your male characters in the game, and once everybody is healed up in the village there, I'm just trying to find the name, in the village of Pau. What you have to do is that you immediately, after you get your full party back and everybody's recovered from the disease that the village of Pau is inflicted by. So once you regain control of all of your characters, you have to use an item in the game that is known as a teleporter, and you have to teleport to the town of Lan. And then if you go to the eye patch wearing boatman, he will actually give you the bromide that you're looking for. But the guide did not cover that. So it was a little gut-wrenching to know that, you know, I had to go over the game again, even though I didn't really have to. You know, it's only one useless item. It really has no relevancy on the game, but I'm an obsessive compulsive completionist, so I wanted to get everything in the game. So I ended up starting over. However, this is where my need to rush through the game and my greed to get the game finished as fast as possible bit me incredibly hard. Because knowing the item I missed, I just wanted to get to that point of the game again and just get it done and over with and just finish the game and retire it for good, so I never have to play it again. But on my second playthrough, I did something incredibly stupid. I missed out on a specific story sequence at the very beginning of the game, and I mean the very beginning. And if you don't do this story sequence in the very beginning of the game, you don't get the last 2 bromides from your friend Ramses. Going back to the guide again, because the guide actually kind of covers this, but I had no idea that such an irrelevant story sequence at the very start of the game could have implications during the epilogue of the actual game. So, let's go to the very beginning of this guide. Alright. Sorry, it's been a while. Okay. So in Berg Village, there's a story sequence here that there's a grumpy guy on the 2nd floor of the weapon shop who wants his 30 pieces of gold back after being conned by your friend Ramses. Ramses ends up giving this guy an egg that he says is a golden egg, but it's really not. It's actually a regular egg that's gold in color, and the egg ended up hatching. So obviously the guy is actually very angry that he got conned. So he demands Ramses pay him back the money that he actually gave him, which was 30 gold pieces. So basically Ramses decides to ask the main character in the game, Alex, can he borrow 30 gold to pay this guy back? Something completely irrelevant. You wouldn't think that something like that would have such an implication, you know, during the final part of the game. But even though I did that on the first playthrough, I ended up giving Ramses the 30 gold. But on the second playthrough, I just decided to say, you know, fuck it. I'm not going to do it, because I thought it was just an irrelevant story sequence. It didn't really mean anything. So I ended up skipping that part. Didn't even do it. I went through the rest of the game, got everything, got to the Black Dragon Fortress, ended up beating the Black Dragon, the village of Pau, everybody was recovered, ended up teleporting to land, getting the bromide that I missed on my first playthrough, got through the end of the game, beat the final boss, and ended up going through the epilogue. And in the epilogue, you're in the town of, just hang on. Oh, it's been such a long time. You're in the town of Maribia. And in Maribia, your friend Ramses, who's actually a playable character for the first part of the game, ends up leaving the party and starts his own store. And the epilogue of the game takes place in Maribia. So you go to Ramses' store, and he says, Alex, you know, thanks for your help. You know, I wanted to repay you, you know, for the 30 gold that you gave me at the very beginning of the game. And he actually gives you the one of the bromides. The thing is during the epilogue, you can get the last 3 bromides in the game. You can get Jess's and Mia's bromide number 3, and what it says here in the back of the book is that you can purchase these from Ramses' shop during the game's epilogue. Only after he gives you Luna's bromide number 1. Speak to him a second time. And what it says here under the caption, Luna's bromide number 1, Ramses gives this to you when you speak to him during the game's epilogue. Now, I forget what it was, but I had skipped that completely irrelevant, what I thought was an irrelevant scene in the village of Berg at the very beginning. But for some apparent reason, if memory serves me correctly, it was Luna's bromide number 1 that he's supposed to give you. But he didn't give it to me. And I was going through this guide thinking, you know, okay, I followed this guide correctly, but I found it really weird that, you know, he didn't give me, you know, like the last item I needed in order to consider the game fully completed. So I ended up, you know, just basically resetting the game and loading my save point, you know, in the game's epilogue, and literally talking to everybody, trying to fathom how I could have missed this item, because through this guide there was no correlation, there was no connection that story sequence in the village of Berg was directly related towards Ramses giving you the Luna bromide number 1. Or it could have been him selling Jess's and Mia's bromide number 3. I forget which is which. I'm sure somebody watching will correct me if they are familiar with the game. Yeah, it is Jess's and Mia's bromide number 3. So it's either that or it's Luna's bromide number 1. So I thought to myself, well, I can't consider the game completed because I didn't get every item. So after doing some research on GameFAQs and looking through some of the guides there, I discovered that you had to give Ramses the 30 gold in order for him to give to the person that he conned in order to get access to the last bromide or bromides in the game. And when I read that, I'll be honest, you know, I had just pretty much beaten the game on my second playthrough, and my heart sunk. And I just said, like, fuck! And I can't consider the game completed. I can't do it. I'm at the epilogue. I only have to talk to one person in the epilogue to get the ending credits of the game to come up, and then the game is finished, completed, done. But just because I missed out on those items, I couldn't do it. So I did what any insane person would do. I actually erased my save file and I started the game over again. So on the third time, after making sure that I wasn't going to miss anything else, that I knew everything that I needed to know with regards to completing this game, I played the game the third time. And this time, I managed to get everything. I made sure I talked to the guy that Ramses had to give 30 gold back to, and I made sure that I grabbed Jess's bromide number 2 from the eye patch wearing a boatman in the village of Lan. But you can't get greedy and you can't rush through games, especially if you want to be a completionist, because you're bound to make mistakes. And even though I know there aren't very many people that would just restart a game just because they miss an item, but that's just how I am. And as painful and as frustrating as it is, you know, at the end of the day, playing a game like that, you know, gave me some very harsh lessons when it comes to completing games. And I think the biggest lesson I can give to anybody, especially when it comes to completing games, is always do your research. And take your gamer pride and literally throw it out the window, because especially when it comes to JRPGs or even Western RPGs, you need to do research. Because especially with how games are nowadays, it's very easy to miss out on story sequences, certain items, you know, different weapons, different armors, and things along those lines, you know, in order to consider a game fully completed. So in a way, Lunar, the Silver Star story, was kind of a trial by fire. And I learned a little bit of humility when it came to completing that game. So that's why no matter what game I play, I always do my research. But I try to keep spoilers to a minimum because, you know, I do want to try to make the game as much of a genuine experience as possible, but I want to make sure that that under any circumstance whatsoever I don't miss out on anything. Because yes, I consider myself a bit obsessive compulsive when it comes to that, but at the end of the day, we all have different ways of playing games, and as frustrating as it is something secretly I enjoy. And this isn't the first game that I've actually had to start over just because I missed, you know, a monster in my bestiary, or, you know, I missed the, or like I missed an item, or, you know, I missed the story sequence, or, you know, anything along those lines. It has happened on more than one occasion, but, you know, every gamer makes mistakes, and I'll be the first person to admit that. So anyway, guys, this is going to be a recurring series that that I want to do, because I have lots of stories with regards to some very painful and humiliating experiences when it comes to completing video games. So anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed that little story, and I'm sorry it ran a little bit long, but as always, thanks for watching, and take care, and I wish you nothing but the best.